Ohio State coach Ryan Day said he does not regret letting Jaxon Smith-Njigba play against Toledo, even though there's obviously been a setback there. The receiver is not able to play against Wisconsin, and we don't know how soon he's going to be back on the field. Nathan Baird from cleveland.com, along with Stephen Means, it looks like Ohio State is going to be without Jaxon Smith-Njigba for, if I were guessing right now, I'd say at least the next 2 weeks. Rutgers on Saturday, Michigan State the week after that, and then Ohio State has an off week. I'd be surprised if he's back on the field before then. How much does Ohio State need Jaxon Smith-Njigba to get back quick? Or do you think, with the way the rest of this offense is clicking right now, they don't need to rush him back because this offense can click without him?
They obviously need Jaxon Smith-Njigba to win a national championship. He'd be stupid to think otherwise. But do they need him to be back quick to beat Rutgers and Michigan State? No. I think these other guys, what we've seen from Marvin Harrison these first 4 weeks, what we've seen from Emeka Egbuka these last 4 weeks, and what we've seen from Julian Fleming, especially these last 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden Cade Stover is Gronk. They're fine. I think they can get through these weeks, and I think I agree with you. I would not expect to see Jaxon Smith-Njigba back until after the bye week because that gives him more time. We're talking about a soft tissue injury at this point with a hamstring. Give him as much time as possible to be 100% so he can be the best version of himself, because when you plop that in with what we've seen from these other weapons, that's what takes Ohio State over the top. But no, you don't need them. You don't need that weapon to beat Michigan State or Rutgers, just like you didn't need it to beat Wisconsin, Toledo, and Arkansas State.
Yeah, and we don't know the full extent of the clinical degree of Jaxon Smith-Njigba's injury. We know it's a hamstring. We know it was obviously keeping him off the field early this year. I think some of the hesitation that people had with this offense early on was, he leaves in the middle of the Notre Dame game and things just looked off. And even a little bit the next week against Arkansas State, things still looked a little bit clunky, though they obviously started coming around, especially with Marvin Harrison Jr. And then things have really started to take off these last 2 weeks. Things have really been flying along these last 2 weeks. And I don't believe in the silver lining thing. The best thing for Ohio State would be if Jaxon Smith-Njigba was healthy right now, because this injury, the reason that they're being super cautious with it right now is that it can linger, it can worsen, and when you start getting into games in November and early December that have to be played outside, I don't think you want soft tissue injuries and that kind of conditions. You need to get him fully healthy for that. But clearly everybody else in this offense is starting to build a rapport with C.J. Stroud the way Jaxon Smith-Njigba was able to over the course of last year. And we talked before that early last year, that was not quite there yet. Those guys were not necessarily on the same page. You had to get 4 or 5 games into the year before that really clicked in. That's, I think, a little bit of what is happening now with Emeka Egbuka, with Julian Fleming, as you said, Marvin Harris, and Cade Stover especially. You're seeing that connection get built. It's not the best thing for Ohio State. It'd be better if Jaxon Smith-Njigba was on the field, but it's becoming an even better second option.
That was going to happen regardless, because that's how football works as you continue throughout the season. It's not a silver lining. I agree with you. You'd rather have the best wide receiver in the country being the best wide receiver in the country. All this has done, taking him out of the equation, is sped up the process. And so instead of maybe week 7, we're talking about, man, look at what C.J. Stroud is doing with Emeka or Marvin Harrison. We're talking about it after 4 weeks, while still having in the back of our minds, at least how we're thinking now, that eventually Jaxon Smith-Njigba is going to be back here. He even put out a tweet which was basically like I'm not pulling a Nick Bosa and just going off to L.A. to prepare for the NFL draft. So if that weapon comes back combined with what we're seeing right now, that's a good thing for Ohio State if there's any silver lining in that.
Yeah, and that tweet that he sent Sunday night is the thing that makes me think we're looking at probably a month from now at the earliest before he comes back, or 3 weeks, however you want to look at it. Next 2 more games, an off week, and then I would expect to get a real reevaluation of Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I'd be really surprised if he played before then. Ohio State's going to have to win a couple Big Ten games without him. At the beginning of the season, that Michigan State trip looked like a tougher thing to win without Jaxon Smith-Njigba than it does right now. But the combination of where they've kind of regressed to, plus what this offense is doing without him right now, tells you that's probably still a positive matchup for Ohio State. More talk about this on Buckeye Talk later this week, and get the texts 614-350-3315 whenever we have intel updates on things like Jaxon Smith-Njigba's injury status. That's where we go first from Buckeye Talk.